Morning. My name is Wang, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Chicago.
Check the microphone. There you go.
My name is Wang, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Chicago School and working on comparative legal ethics. I'm so excited and honored to be here and to have opportunity to introduce our speaker, Professor Huaiyu Wang, a philosopher and educator committed to global ethics and its comparative dimension. Professor Wang received his PhD in philosophy from the Pennsylvania State University and is currently the Associate Professor of Philosophy at Georgia College and State University. Professor Wang was also the former president of the Association of Chinese Philosophers in America. Professor Wang's research interests cover a range of areas including Asian philosophy and religion, contemporary continental philosophy, and ethics. His recent works, focusing on early Confucian teachings and their modern significance, have appeared in Philosophy East and West and Tao, a journal of comparative philosophy, and Journal of Chinese Philosophy. He is working on a project right now exploring the meaning and origins of art and ritual and the importance for moral life, with a tentative title, The Refinement of Ritual and the Heart of Confucian Ethics. Professor Wang has been invited to speak in many universities around the world, including Columbia University, Vanderbilt University, and Fudan University, and here at University of Chicago. And once again, I feel deeply honored to have the opportunity to introduce Professor Zipori, a sinologist with his specialty in Tentai-Buddhism and Taoism, and comparative philosopher interested in the dialogue between Chinese philosophy and continental philosophy. Professor Zipori is professor of Chinese religion, philosophy, and comparative thought at the University of Chicago Divinity School since 2014. Prior to joining the University of Chicago, he taught at Northwestern University, Harvard University, and the University of Michigan, where he received his PhD. Professor Zipori is a prolific scholar and translator. Some of his important monographs include Omnicentric Holism into Subjectivity in Tentai-Buddhist Thought, The Neo-Taoist Philosophy of Guoshang, and Being and Ambiguity, Philosophical Experiment with Tentai-Buddhism, and Ironies of Oneness and Difference, and finally, Li and Coherence in Chinese Buddhist Thought and its antecedents. Professor Zipori's work also stretches to the translation of Zhuangzi, as can be seen in his translation of essential writings and selection of commentaries, and his current project of translating the whole corpus. Recently, he finished writing a book on atheism as a form of religious and mystical experience. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Huaiyu Wang.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. And so I suppose the time we have is from 45 to 25, right? Yeah, 25.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank you, thank the Department of World Religious Administration for inviting me to present the Chinese and Confucian perspective on global ethics for this exciting event. It's a great honor to be here at the University of Chicago and to be part of this cross-cultural dialogue and to learn from different religious perspectives around the world on this important project. And I want to thank Professor Grappling also for writing comments to my paper. The title of my presentation is Hongming and the Religion of the Citizenship, a Confucian vision beyond moral and cultural relativism. I will introduce the Chinese gentleman and scholar Hongming shortly, along with this idea of soul expansion and the religion of good citizenship. Here I would like to say something first about moral and cultural relativism, and along with it, universalism. And let me start with a comment that we talked about yesterday about a global ethics declaration, where it said that global ethics as intended by Parliament of is not a global ideology or a single unified religion beyond all existing religions, and certainly not the domination of one religion over all others. Rather, it refers to a fundamental consensus on binding values irrevocable standards and personal attitudes. Now, I preached very much the language and the culture here, and distanced itself from a universalism. But now there is still some ambiguity regarding the basic orientation and the mission of the global ethic, and its stance on universalism and relativism. And it's important that I present two competing perspectives and views on global ethic. One is represented by the renowned ethicist Peter Singer in his One World, for example, and Singer refers to global ethic declaration, and in particular golden rule, as a possible common ground for a global ethic. In Singer's view, this global ethic is necessary for overcoming moral and cultural relativism, and for what he envisions as the ethical foundation of the coming era of a single world community with one atmosphere, one economy, one law, and so that we could accept diminishing significance of national boundaries and take a pragmatic, step-by-step approach to a greater global governance. Now, I have some concerns with Peter Singer's vision, and it strikes me as a universalist approach, and as it has a constructive corrective measures within the current capitalistic economic system. And it also reminds me of what American philosopher Richard Rorty describes as a liberal vision of a classless global society for which the laws of other cultural inheritance, minority cultures, will not greatly matter. And as Rorty related, the once prevalent liberal utopia of the West did not involve everybody speaking English and drinking only Coca-Cola. But even if it had, this might well have seemed to be cheaper price to pay as with a world in which everybody spoke only Chinese and drank only tea, for that matter. So my concern is that why should we not allow the United States people to drink Coca-Cola and Chinese people to drink tea, for that matter, as long as they do not insist that tea or Coca-Cola is the best drink, for that matter. So I will present an alternative vision for global ethic, as presented by the late comparative scholar Henry Rossmont in his recent book called Against Individualism. Now, Rossmont argued that the problem facing the world today, poverty, inequality, environmental degradation, hatred, violence, and war, cannot even be addressed properly, much less resolved within the confines of a capitalist economic system. And so in order to make of a world different and more unique global village than the one it is becoming, Rossmont argues that we must have a different understanding of human self and different kind of ethics, namely the Confucian role ethics, and which sees ourselves and our fellow human beings not as autonomous individuals, but as fundamentally interrelated role bearers, not as right bearers, but role bearers, who lives those roles. And this is a vision and conception of human self that he shared with, along with Roger Ames and other leading philosophers. And the main argument is that we are children, siblings, parents, neighbors, friends, students, colleagues, lovers, and much more. And in essence, we're relational selves. We are defined by family and social relations, and each of us is uniquely specified as a person with precious little left over to piece together a bare, autonomous individual self. So this is a contrast between relational self and individual, free and autonomous self. And for Rossmont, role ethics grounded in a general idea of the family is a prime candidate for a cross-cultural dialogue to ethics. And they call the religious base of this ethics called human-centered religiousness. And they argue that cross-cultural and religious dialogue will be more productive by shifting the priority and focus from what they believe to what are their practices and why do they engage in this practice. So what I call the privacy of practice. So now I would say that I'm more sympathetic to Ross Monteiro-Amy's vision of global ethic than to Singer's universalism. But I still find some problems and concerns in their formulation of Confucian rule ethics, and I propose some ways to revise or refine their position and possibly enhance that position, and to facilitate a more productive cross-cultural dialogue. Overall, I would like to draw upon the thinker I may name, Hongming, who lives in the late 19th century, early 20th century thinker, and I will introduce him shortly. But I will recover and rethink and redevelop two of Hongming's major ideas, namely soul expansion and the religion of good citizenship, in order to demonstrate the value of the Confucian human-oriented religiousness for a global ethic that is hopeful of overcoming the paradoxes of universalism and relativism. So I would like to make three major points in today's speech. The first point I would like to make is that I argue that the global ethic will be most effective by exploring our way beyond universalism and relativism. For this purpose, Hongming's idea on soul expansion and the religion of good citizenship may contribute to the mission of global ethic by recognizing and revitalizing a harmonious development of various local and national communities without implicating a narrow-minded nationalism. The religion of good citizenship and human-oriented religiousness can serve as a productive base for cross-cultural dialogue, as it is hopeful of bridging or at least to circumvent the controversies about transcendental deities and realities. Second, I will draw upon Hongming's idea of soul expansion to redevelop a Confucian cosmopolitan vision for peaceful and harmonious interaction and cross-cultural dialogue among different religious and spiritual traditions. I will show also how this religion of good citizenship may sponsor a cultural pluralism without implicating a dogmatic relativism. Last but not least, I will bring out the heart of the Confucian religion of good citizenship and human-oriented religiousness as the emphatic openness of the self, as the organic harmony of the body, heart, and mind, and the synthesis of all things. This emphatic openness of the self informs an organic understanding of human self and a holistic vision to unify various dimensions of human experience, including moral, spiritual, political, ritual, and artistic dimensions. That informs what I call a kind of moral consortium that can be constructive for further development of the global ethic, for resolving conflicts and sectarian violence among different religious and social groups. So, in a sense, one major revision of Henry Rossmont and Roger Amy's model is that they call it human-centered religion. I call it human-oriented religion. I will explain why and through this process. And first, some introduction to this figure, Hongming. Hongming is a European educated scholar and an ardent defender of the Confucian cultural tradition against modern Western invasion. Gu is an extremely interesting and controversial figure. His works received very high compliments from various intellectuals around the world, including Leo Tolstoy and Mahatma Gandhi. And literary figures as diverse as Japanese Akutagawa and the English Wang and the Indian poet Huaiyu were all drawn to visit him when they were in China. Heinrich Nielsen, one of Gu's German admirer and translator, described Gu in this way. As I read it, it's a long passage, but I think it's worthwhile to read in full. And he described Gu as a really extraordinary phenomenon who has by no means been adequately taken note of. A man who has absorbed and digested Western culture in the most thorough manner, who knows Goethe just like a German, who knows Carlyle, Emerson, and other Anglo-Saxon writers just like an Anglo-Saxon, who is at home with the Bible like a best Christian, but whose independent, simple, clear mind possesses the power not only to maintain his own peculiarity, but also to see that for their self-preservation it is necessary for Oriental people to stand firm on the ground of their own ancient past culture, and not to allow Western culture tailored for completely different circumstances to impose itself upon them. For its modern materialistic civilization could work on them merely as a subversive killing toy. So this is Nelson's comment. Now, Gu is a very controversial figure because he is not well received in China. And he is often caricatured by the revolutionary generation who are eager to imitate modern Western powers for economic and military development. Now, personally, I take Gu to be a counterpart to Gandhi in China, but his fate in China is much less popular and welcome. And hence, Gu's work and ideas have been most forgotten in current scholarship. But I'm glad to point out that the recent revival of interest in Gu's ideas, and there are a number of articles coming out about Gu's works, and there's also a book by an Iranian author, and striking me, and they point out that Gu's version of Confucianism resonates with Islamic religion in some kind of fundamental ways. Now, in this paper, I would like to recover, rethink, and redevelop Gu's idea of soul expansion and the religion of the citizenship, which can be viewed as a precursor, as I think, of the German philosopher Hans-Georg Gadamer's well-known thesis on the fusion of horizons. And they present a Confucian vision beyond moral and cultural relativism and a promising path for global ethics. So let me now I talk about something about the idea of expansion. Expansion is an idea that the Matthew Arnold talked about a basic instinct for civilization, but who take that idea and refine it. Now, it is important to note that Gu's idea of soul expansion discloses a way beyond the universalism and the relativism. It shows that the preservation and the refinement of one's own cultural legacy do not have to implicate a narrow-minded nationalism. In Gu's view, it is about the early 20th century or in the late 19th century, the Chinese literati and the scholar gentlemen officials and the Christian missionaries in China were both confined by their limited visions and the standards of right and wrong. They were both helpless because they did not know that Christianity or Confucianism is not the absolute true religion. No more than that, the civilization in China and Europe is the true, absolute, perfect religion, or civilization, sorry. Now, both the modern Western man and the old Chinese literati are very much in need of expansion. Expansion in a true sense, which means soul expansion. It is through this soul expansion that destructive forces of economic and material expansion can be properly contained. And so this is, I read the Gu's idea of expansion, and his main thesis is the following. And I think this main thesis works not only for his day and still relevant for us today. And this is what Gu says, is that what is wrong not only in China, but also in the world today, is not so much progress and reform, but open door and expansion, not, however, in a political or material, but in an intellectual and moral sense. Without the intellectual open door, there can be no true soul expansion. And without true soul expansion, there can be no progress. I have already given St. Paul's definition of open door, which is prove all things, hold fast to the good. I will now give Confucius' definition of expansion. Confucius says, among really educated people, there is no race distinction. This is what Confucius says. Now, this is the first section about Hongming. Let me move to the second section about how this idea may inform a Confucian cosmopolitanism and the primacy of practice. So in the inauguration lecture at Heidelberg University in 2006, Professor Gottlieb Müller takes Gu's idea of Confucianism as the royal road to true civilization of the whole human race, quote, which had been threatened to break into symmetry between the cellar of a false liberalism and charges of materialism. For me, this royal road may suggest a way beyond universalism and relativism, as it sponsors a pattern or possibility of cultural pluralism without narrow-minded nationalism. Now, we can take the cue here from Confucius saying that among really educated people, there is no race, no class, no ethnic or national distinctions. And as Wu states it, there is very little difference between the east of Confucius and the west of Shakespeare and Goethe. And now, I want to tell you a story about Gu's personal experience and illustrate this kind of resonance or sympathetic resonance between the East and West, and the different practice can have common spirit. Now, Gu got his master in literature from the University of Edinburgh in England. And when he studied there, he maintained almost all the Chinese customs and dress and one of the things that he did that during that time is that maintain the custom of ancestral sacrifice. When every winter solstice, he would prepare a whole table of wine and a feast as a kind of way to make sacrifice to his ancestors. Of course, this strikes an Englishman as very weird, right? And his landlady and landlord lady would, of course, very politely wait until he finished all the rituals and then ask him, when would your ancestors come down to enjoy all this wine and the feast? So it's a legitimate question, and Gu has a very smart answer to that. He said that on the same moment when your ancestors smell the fragrance of the flower you had offered. So it is a very interesting comparison, right? And so that we see that different practices may have this common spirit. And it is very important that we have a soul expansion, but not a superficial expansion of knowledge and practice. And globalization does not mean that you used to offer flowers, now you offer wine and feast instead, or you alternate. This year I offer wine and feast, the next year I offer flower. But it is important that you see the common spirit and preserve your own practice and with an open-mindedness. And that is I think the essence of true education. And the soul expansion is not, so in this sense, the soul expansion requires a deep understanding of one's own cultural tradition and the cultivation of true type of humanity through the religion of good citizenship. Confucianism, in this sense, exemplified a religion of good citizenship as a way beyond the characterless universalism, as it allows for cultural pluralism without narrow-minded relativism. I will strike there are three values to this religion of good citizenship. And the first value of this good religion of the human-oriented religiousness is that it's personified what we talk about authentic humanity. The idea of authentic humanity is important for the global ethic, but it should not be, or it is not, an abstract, isolated ideal individual. And individuals must live ideal humanities or authentic humanity must live to and through the various roles and functions in the interdependent network of social relations. Therefore, for a global ethic, the value of every religious teachings need to be personified in the authentic humanity as good citizens. Good citizens, of course, are broadly construed, and the Confucius idea of good citizen is actually exemplary personality, not only in the political realm, but also in family, in local communities. And you can be a good citizen as a musician in a small circle, right? And a good citizen in the family, broadly construed. And the second value is that this religion of good citizenship circumvents the controversies about transcendental deity and afterlife. And meaningful as they are, these theological debates may never get we may never get a complete agreement about these theological debates. And there is no need to go to war or go to escalate into sectarian violence for difference in theories. And the most important questions is that we are maintaining a priority on the religion of good citizenship, on the primacy of practice and personality, who are able to, and this primacy of practice and personality is the third value of Confucian religion of good citizenship, because it is a new understanding of ethics. It is not just norms and principles. Ethics is not just rules, but cultivates the personality with sagacious judgment and empathetic openness of the self, who are able to find the synthesis and synergy of competing values by harmonizing the moral, political, spiritual dimensions to realize the true ideal of civilization. So this is the three values of religion of good citizenship I would like to kind of sum up, and which informs a Confucian cosmopolitan vision I will describe below. And despite controversies about the religious nature of Confucianism, the essence of Confucian teachings, as I see it, is a way of soul expansion that is oriented to harmonize the various spiritual and shamanistic customs in different regions of China. The Confucian harmonization of different spiritual traditions may still be edifying for those who were troubled by moral and cultural relativism today. It envisions a kind of unity that is not dictated by a supreme or transcendental divinity, which alleged to be greater than all other spiritual or religious deities. Confucius described that this cosmopolitan vision, quote, as a world without an overarching ideology. It was a world unified by the common destination that allowed of a variety of rules, and by the unanimous orientation that admitted of hundreds of ideas and attentions. For Confucius, the primary feature of the way of having the divinity